Are you trying to get rat on?
Possibly.
Okay.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the General Welfare Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Ford, and this is my co-host, Jason, or Slice of Horse.
Hey,
Call
what's
him.
that?
And today, we are here to discuss, I guess, a multitude of things. I guess the first one on the list could be inflation.
Yes, I am a
Its
Sky
causes are.
economist.
Mm-hmm.
I studied
Yes.
at the School of Sky, so I'm ready.
Yeah, we're semi-experts, okay? Sky. But no, seriously, we were just discussing this conversation I had with this guy who is a self-touted anarcho-capitalist.
Yes.
And he was talking about how price gouging apparently didn't have very much to do with the inflation, if at all.
Right. And how property tax is a form of serfdom, and totally not like rent and mortgage stuff that really affects people.
Right. Yeah, that's not close to feudalism at all,
And me being like a complete peasant renter myself, I can tell you that I'm at the mercy of my what do you call that, apartment complex, and whatever they decide is the price that I have to pay for rent every year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I can't do anything about it. That's
And
not the that's private citizens.
right, exactly. In a lot of cases, not only that, but they can, as far as I know, they can kick you out for just about anything, right?
Just about anything. And I mean, we worry, like we have a dog, for instance, and like I'm worried. I'm always worried about our dog, like how loud the dog barks. Um, whether the neighbors are happy with the dog. What every little thing, and I mean, I always try to be a good, friendly neighbor, and I totally get people's concern for their safety. It's not so much that, but there's this underlying fear of always wondering what they're going to change. Just to give you an idea, like there was a time that they put a sticker on my car, and this, anybody who's rented an apartment will have similar stories. They put a sticker on my car saying that I had like 2 days before my car gets towed, because my registration tag was old. Now, just to be fair, their whole point is they want to keep the property, nice so that it retains its value. But that should tell you something right there, because I pay my rent, like, and again, we're in the thousands here now for a 2-bedroom apartment. I pay my rent every month. Like, come on, I'm subject. If my car isn't falling apart, are you really going to threaten me just because my tag is a couple months old? And by the way, uh, my car registration was fine. It's just that I never got the tag that I needed to put it on, so that was the issue. But it's these things that they have total and utter control over. Property tax, like it's something that we all have to go through, and tax if anything, but you don't have nearly the amount of restrictions put on your property if you own property as you would if you rent property. That's ridiculous.
Right. Exactly. Now you'll hear these people claim that you don't really own your property because I guess you pay a tax on it, and I guess the bank could repossess it at any time. What's your response to that?
As far as the bank being involved, that's more having to do with the mortgage, I believe. As far as like you not paying your property
Okay.
tax, like the government, and I mean, I think they can't do this anymore. I could be wrong, but if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail.
Right, exactly. Or I
That's
guess if you don't pay your bills, they shut your stuff off, right? Whatever it is you're not paying.
When you say your bills, like your utility bills, that's not to
Hmm.
the government, to private corporations.
Right.
Now,
The utilities are the private.
a minute though, but I mean, the way I see taxes, as far as like property tax, that would be the case even if we have, imaginary anarcho-capitalist land. Uh, it- Everybody has access to a lake, right? The water to the lake. Okay. Well, how are you going to prevent hoarders? How are you going to prevent people from, unmasking a huge amount of the lake compared to everyone else? Well, what's going to
Right.
happen is Somalia or some shit like that, where you have, you know,
Hmm.
if not like actual fucking, like you need some sort of force in order to protect your part of the lake. Well, what does that mean then? Uh, the people with the most firepower, the people with the most muscle, are going to be the people who control most of the lake. We see it all the time. For the sectors of each country that aren't really controlled, quote unquote, by the government, or are loosely controlled. What do we always see? We see gangs. We see
Of course.
filled with gangs, and the reason is because nobody. Well, I mean, because there's not a huge police force there, or if there is, there's a reason why. But all I'm just trying to say is, like, there's always something there that is going to give you some sort of
Well,
tech.
yeah, that too, and when it comes to water, uh, I guess it's got to be distributed somehow. Would you rather have a private corporation taking the rights to certain water that you would go to your drinking water, and then they could just set prices on that, or would you rather have a government distribute it and have people get what they need?
Well, not just any government, though. I mean, when we
Hmm.
talk about what the United States is,
Yeah.
and I think this is really important for, like, would I rather be in the presence of an authoritative, like, dictator type of government, or would I rather have like a representative democracy, or anything close to that? Well, I mean, I would rather have a representative democracy as my form of government, and therefore, if we base that on like a private corporation, at least I have some say in terms of what my government does. It might not be a lot, but at least it's something better than nothing. That's why people vote.
Right. Uh, yeah. Can you hold on just a second, Jason? I gotta listen to something real quick. Okay, my bad. I was just listening to a message. All right, they can continue. No, I was just gonna say that, like, you just talked about gangs a little bit earlier, right? Hello.
So you're
Oh yeah. All right. Now I was saying, like, you were talking about gangs just a little bit earlier, forming and those areas and stuff. And I was just thinking earlier about, like, why do gangs get started up in the first place, or at least in all throughout history, what is what's the main reason they get started up, right? I don't think
yeah,
most people join a gang because they want to fight and be all cool and stuff. I think most people join a gang because that's what they have to do to survive. For throughout history, especially even in the United States, right? There were certain individuals that felt that they had to join gangs because they were turned down by employers or whatever. Like all they knew how to do was drug deal, right?
yeah. Well, I think when you say, like, it's not the fight or all that stuff, I think you're saying two things that mean the same thing, because
Hmm.
even like gangs promote the youth, they see that as a status upgrade from currently. You know, People do this to get out of the different position that they're in. Whether it's like selling drugs, or other reasons, but it's all towards the same stuff, and it's to offer some sort of stability.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, but they find it appealing.
Yeah.
That's a way to survive, though.
Well, I
You,
mean,
you know,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
had a job that paid you adequately, provided for your needs, and I guess even to some extent your wants, would you even really need to join a gang? Would you need to join a criminal organization if you knew how to do
right.
anything else?
Brad should know better too. He's been alive long enough to see exactly what has happened when the United States topples governments like in Libya or in Iraq. And
Well, he lives in St. Louis. They've got a high crime rate there. He should know. He should definitely know better, but he
look,
doesn't. He thinks it's the
we
government.
talked about this before, though. Like, I get the feeling that's why he's what he is. You know, he sees the government as inefficient because of where he lives. And to an extent, he's right, but there's a definite reason for it. And it's because there are people like him, well, not necessarily like him, but have the same ideology. And what they do is they run for government only to dismantle very things that are.
And then claim, oh, this is proof that government doesn't work. This is what Republicans do all the time.
But what I was trying to get at is, like, you know, what happened in Libya after the fall of Gaddafi. Like, there was a power vacuum, and you know, there were rival, like, militia that took over. Same with Iraq. You know, you had ISIS came in the game. As long as there's a power vacuum, there's going to be a force that takes over that power vacuum, no matter how much you want to call it what you want to call it. Whatever you want to blame for it. You know, if you want to blame communism for it, like how he does with Somalia, you know, so be it. But nonetheless, there's a power vacuum. There's a force that takes over with the amount of necessary guns or muscle, and that's your new government, basically.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, also you have to realize that what they call it or what they start out as isn't always going to be the same, or it isn't what they actually meant. Like, I think was it the Soviet Union? I don't think that they really meant to bring communism.
Oh,
If you catch my drift, huh?
I think it was an honest attempt, but I mean, I don't really.
It just failed. It failed then.
We have these conversations often. Like, I don't really think you're ever going to get to a, you know, pure capitalist, pure communist type of. I think
of course not.
I think most people, like, when they're in charge, they do what is convenient and what is pragmatic to make things work. You know, in the name of whatever they call it. You know.
Right. So maybe there isn't so much pure like capitalists or communist or socialist societies. I think it's more of each policy might lean more towards a communist idea or a capitalist idea or a socialist idea.
And
You know,
kind of, like, I don't discount markets, or, you know, I'm not so far to that extent where I think, you know, capitalism is just a complete fuckery. To an extent, I do.
That'll destroy itself. I mean, I don't think it will ever fully destroy itself, but I think that as time goes on, it won't be as needed. You know, if you talk about the age of AI and you see AI eventually replacing some people's jobs, you will have to have a basic income for people if they're out of a job.
I honestly think, like, even all of those things, like, as long as people have enough to eat, and as long as people see, like, an accumulative growth in their work, you know, like they see a goal, you know, as long as we have that type of system, where people perceive it as quote unquote fair to an extent, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, is going to be okay, you know. But as long as people see that type of thing, you know, it's not going to be okay.
Exactly. I think the problem, well, there's a few problems that exist with at least within the United States. Is we've talked about this before, where not even necessarily just something having to do with like what we just talked about, you know, the different kinds of economic theories for how societies should work, but also just resource distribution in general, wealth distribution, everything. I think it's gone too far to the side of capitalism, at least like since the 80s with Reagan, right? I mean, they made it so that companies they're the real bosses of America. The government kind of just, for the most part, answers to them. I mean, people have to get elected by these money from these very people.
There's always been an extent of that, but it's like the
It's gotten way worse
yeah,
than
the
it ever
distribution
has been.
is way to corporations. I mean, again, we never really had like a strong labor union force in the United States, but it was more so like, back in the 50s and 60s, the so-called golden age of capitalism, um, than it is now. Uh, and Reagan dismantled all of that. The big one was the airline industry and the labor union that was involved with that. And I forget like all of the details, but that was like straw that broke the camel's back to
Oh, you're talking about with it was in Ronald Reagan's administration, right?
yeah. And what made that a
What
huge?
happened?
I think it was like a government union, and that's
Yes,
such a huge force that was destroyed.
it was a public union that Reagan basically had crippled, which is funny because his stances on unions seemed to change once he became president.
Oh yeah.
If that
Oh
makes
right,
sense.
right, right. Because he was in the was it the something like that.
What was it again? You said?
He was in a union himself. He was in like the Actors Guild, I believe it's like a Hollywood union for
Right, exactly. He was a member of a union, and then he went on to proceed with anti-union action.
just like I mean that's the amazing thing about these fucking people. They'll you know they'll take advantage of the very things that that help them move up, in life. Like our governor, for instance, and the welfare that he got for his permanent injury, and then they'll dismantle it as soon as they get into power.
Hmm.
And to me, that is like sociopath almost.
I I think it's very likely that a lot of these people that do stuff like that, when they already were supporting such a position themselves and then going to basically do a 180, is I think they're that somewhere along the way, I honestly think their palms were greased, so to speak.
Their palms are what?
Their palms were greased, so to speak. You know,
Well, people
they
have
got something out of doing that.
sure, sure, and people have an uncanny ability to like justify their actions and justify their positions in life in whatever way is convenient for them. And I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of that myself, but noticing other people do it in positions of power, it's insane.
Hmm. It
Yeah,
is
I was gonna say something, but I forgot. Damn it, I can't remember what I was gonna say. Something that had to do with rent, but anyway.
rent. Well, I mean, rent. You don't really see rent control anymore.
Well,
I
interesting.
noticed.
There's something that I forgot to mention to you last time talking about this. The last president to price cap Richard Nixon, who price cap in mortgage, not mortgage. I'm sorry, in housing prices and rent control, and I forget the other extents, but the price cap was aimed at inflation. And this is the one thing that seems to work the best with inflation. But you're not going to see that today for obvious reason because that inhibits your profit margin that these
Well, of
corporations have.
course, that's all it's about nowadays. I mean, if you think back to, I don't know if you read all of those texts from Rad, but he was basically saying that, of course they're going to maximize their profits. They always have. That's their and they're entitled to do that. He says.
And at whatever cost too. You could say that as well.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. Money's money.
And then if Brad says that very thing, then we're saying the same things.
Hmm.
And again, like not all life has to be, or not all life should be a commodity. Basic, survival things. They should not be on a profit margin because
Of course not.
it's spelled disaster, and it is,
But
and it.
that's what happens when you let capitalism get too out of control. You start having, well, I think we talked about this before, where basically people's needs are capitalized on,
Yeah,
and it's taken advantage of. We talked about this with insulin, right? them
for
jacking
sure.
up the prices and having it to where, like, what is it? One company completely dominates the market with insulin, right?
Uh,
Like, or was it
something
EpiPens? I think maybe it's both. I don't
for
know.
EpiPens, I know for sure, yes, but I don't know which company or which pharmaceutical has like
J-
a dominant.
Joe Manchin's daughter, funny enough, was involved in the EpiPen scandal, so we know where all those people lie based on their actions. You know, like
I,
daughter, like father. I mean, she got what did he get out of the debt ceiling deal? He got like a pipeline approved
oh,
of that
it
would have
can't.
like total environmental concerns surrounding that pipeline, but they don't give a shit. There's money to be made. Huh?
Well, no. Yeah. I was kind of thrown off guard with Joe Manchin there because I know it was like a pipeline in West Virginia, and to be fair, like I mean that's what Congress people do. They try to get the what is it called, pork, in types of bills so that they can bring back to their constituents. Fair enough, but at the same time, that bill was really going to help West Virginians as well. And I
Yeah.
guess that's an argument you can be made, like which would serve most West Virginians more, the bill as it was before or the bill that Joe Manchin made after?
Probably the bill before, knowing Joe Manchin. He seems to be Mr. Water Down with
Oh,
bills and
West Virginia.
corporate, make it more pro corporate. Huh?
What I was going to say, West Virginia still remains one of the poorest states in the union.
Of course. Yeah, it's I think doesn't it like depend largely on like one resource?
Oh,
Yeah, coal. That's what they depend on.
well, there it was. So I was reading a book of something about like how industry is going to change in the future. And I remember reading how West Virginia was a huge like manufacturing industry as well. But that is there's just a bunch of like ghost towns from that now for because manufacturing went overseas.
Right.
But like Build Back Better and all that stuff brings manufacturing back to the United States. I mean, when we talk about like windmills and like what we're going to need to build all of these things, that's a huge industry for manufacturing. And right now the problem is just on these lines. We can't find enough people who will fill those jobs.
Yeah. So there's like a shortage of labor for those jobs. That it is a problem. Um,
Shortage of labor for a bunch of those positions. It's not just manufacturing. It's like electricians. I forget what else. I mean, I'm not like a huge expert into
so
it.
certain like skill sets too is
Yeah,
what's required here.
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's more than enough positions for people, I guess, who want to do coal mining.
But there isn't. That's the thing too. Like
Oh, there isn't? Not anymore?
no, because it's a dying industry. I mean,
Wow.
if anything, coal miners can't find the work they need, because there's just not that many coal mines anymore, or it's not like it's not profitable to own a coal mine anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And I would assume like your number one, customers these days are like, countries overseas that are investing more in coal because they're trying to industrialize faster. But that's about it. It's not going to be a domestic thing because our primary source now of fossil fuel is obviously oil and gas.
Right. So it's kind of going to die, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's not no doubt about it. It's going to. I think it was predicted like in the next 20 years. Could be longer, but I believe it's like 20 years.
Yeah. So gasoline dominates over it, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean also the switch to alternative energy as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but also there's always been a push with coal.
But we could replace, I mean, if we um, actually did like a furrow transition over the years, we could have new jobs come back for those people, like in the form of like green jobs or whatever, I guess you call them, right?
I mean, theoretically, but what the what the huge com- complexity with this is like training these people, and transitioning them into like a new field. And I guess the data so far says that it's not so easy to do that. And also, these people are older, like a lot of them are like in their 40s and 50s. And it's one thing to tell somebody who's worked as a coal miner for all that time, hey, why don't you work on the windmill now, buddy? It's
Mm.
But I mean, it's not impossible. It's just like, we need to start talking about it now, or we need to start planning for it now. We're not.
Well, you don't just get the old workers; you get new workers in there and train them,
Sure,
and you're
yeah.
good to go. I don't know what the unemployment rate is in West Virginia, but I'm sure it's not. I don't imagine it being very low.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I we were talking about this a while back too. Like ideally, the way, and I got this from another book too, and I thought, yeah, I mean, this is a good, this is what we did back in the New Deal. We should really start doing it again. Is
mhm.
offer like unemployment, like
We
people.
need a new deal.
Yeah, but so we're always set on the unemployment rate. Our primary focus should always be zero. And the reason that we should make it zero is to offer like government, like public jobs, so that we can train these people.
Yeah, I
And
mean the people on the margins that have a tough time finding jobs in the private sector should be given government jobs.
that's how I see like the New Deal kind of working is where, this huge transition into alternative energy, offer these government jobs where they work on infrastructure or something like that. They get the training that they need in order to transition back into the private sector.
Right. It's funny. You mentioned that because Brad and I were actually talking about this.
Who's Brad? Oh, Rad. I'm sorry.
or Monty or whatever his name is. I don't know what his actual name. It's like Tracy or Monty or something. I don't
I
know.
thought you said Brad, but guess Red. We know
He gets very squirmy about his real name. Um,
I respect his privacy. It's all good.
yeah, it's yeah, it is fine. But no, I was just gonna say that when I mentioned that idea, I think you and I both have had about the government provided jobs in play, to help people on the margins that are chronically unemployed. He mentioned that, oh yeah, the MMT people, they had an idea like this.
See, see, I'm so bad with like acronyms.
Oh, modern monetary theory.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially that's where I got it from. Yes.
I mean, it's the modern monetary theory is not bad. It's actually pretty explanatory of our current economy. I mean, we are a dominating force in the world economy, right?
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
we
whether or
can
not
just
you,
print and coin our own money at this point. Like we are good for it. We have a really good credit line. I don't
yeah,
see why it's such a problem to spend trillions of dollars when Republicans are all do it when their administrations with like was it tax cuts
yeah, I just saw a
and all
graph
that
on.
spending on military. They do
Yeah.
it all the time, so they're full of shit. They pretend to care about this so-called deficit and budget and everything when they're not in power.
So I have two comments. Um, well, first, going into modern monetary theory, whether you agree with it or not, it is what is essentially the function of our economy and the way that we use money today. That is
I
modern
mean, at
money.
this point, yes, like so, yeah, it's a fiat currency. We're dominating economic force in the world.
Yeah.
Um,
But, but there is a lot of confusion, especially with our Congress people, whether they do this on purpose or not, in understanding how that is utilized. And a lot of these people still try to equate governments who have that type of power of distributing money that way as businesses. And I don't know, when was the last time Walmart print their own money? You know, there is like some version of these types of things. Like if you ever go to like Dave and Buster's, they offer like those cards that you can only use at Dave and Buster's. That kind
right,
of.
right. Yeah,
So
the special cards are like you'll have what is it like maybe like there's like a card you can only use at some restaurant or like some kind of like business, like they're like deal cards essentially, right?
Right. And I mean, it is some version of what we do. There's one caveat, and that caveat is the whole world, is based on the U.S. dollar. And so my other comment on that is the only reason that is the case is because of our strong military and our strong presence.
Well, hey, see, I've actually been saying this to Boutros and other people I talk to, and I've actually discussed this very thing with I think it was Sacred who actually brought it up one time when someone was talking about Bitcoin in some Discord VC like a while back.
Mm.
But basically, the sad nasty truth about our nation's currency's like value and its standing in the world is that the size of our military and what we've done around the world kind of contributes to the value of the currency.
So one could justify, large military spending on that, but there is also a caveat with that, and that is the amount of money that we spend on our military is mostly bloat. It doesn't go anywhere, and it's
Well,
extremely.
exactly. And the other thing too is that I think we spend way past what we even need to anyway to uphold our currency.
And the
I
book
think
that I'm reading,
we still, huh?
oh, go ahead. I interrupted
Oh, I
you.
was just gonna say we still help out around the world, and basically, like, we make people like trade on the petrodollar, or else, like, you know how it goes.
But
So I mean, of course.
but
Huh?
what we spend our military on gets what's the
Oh
word?
yeah, it gets lost. There was a
Well,
report. There was a leak about how the Pentagon basically just a lot of the money that they got, just they don't know where it went, and then they go and ask for more.
private. That's where it goes. Private contracts, and
Right, or
that's
I'm
actually
aware
they
that
know
there's
where
a
it went.
podcast, but if I could throw something onto that, also what we do buy that we know of, they tend not to be good investments. They tend to be quagmires that were in forever, just babysitting, or like we make an area worse, or like we're not really getting our money's worth. That's for sure.
Iraq is the perfect example right now, and just how much went to private contracts and like
Afghanistan.
Blackwater, for instance, and what they did. Can't even keep track of the money because it's on them, right? And so we're talking millions gone out the window
Well,
for
actually, I suspect that they know where the money went. They're just trying to get even more money after they say, "Oh, we lost it. We need more from
I mean,
Congress."
the businesses for sure, yeah, probably. But well, honestly, the way that businesses work, just in general, like me, for instance, in my companies, no, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't know where that money is because businesses come money goes. So no, I think that is actually pretty true. That there's just a mishandling of budgets, and they just spend willy nilly. They don't really know where they're spending or what they're spending on, and like a budgetary committee asks these corporations, okay, what did you spend in Iraq in such and such? They don't have a record for it, and that has happened more than once. We've seen.
Don't you think that's on purpose, though?
No, well, I mean,
You don't have a record.
on purpose, in the sense that,
At least some of it, it's on
and on
purpose.
purpose in the sense that they can get away with it, that they don't have any type of like regulation to say they can't do what they're doing, and so they're going to
Well,
do
of
it.
course, and that's why they do it. It's just with any regulation, like if you have a lack of regulation with business in general, like they're just gonna do whatever they want because there's nothing stopping them.
But just to be
Yeah.
on the safe side, just to be a pure, centrist, true American here. Also,
Right.
this, continue having a large military, United States, but we need to address the fact that yeah, it's bloated, and most of what we pay in taxes to our military doesn't go to the military. It goes to private private contracts. That is where most of our money goes now.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Down the street from me, or down the highway, I should say, Raytheon. Is
Yeah,
right,
me
yeah,
too.
it's right down the highway, right?
My company's right. Well, in McKinney, it's right next to Raytheon.
I'm telling you, man, they're huge. Like especially here, you see them like every few miles at least somewhere.
We get a ton of patients from Raytheon too. It's insane.
I'm sure. And it's fucking gated up like
Oh
crazy,
yeah.
man. They don't want you to look at any of their secrets, man.
Well, Texas is a state for those private military
Of
contracts.
course. We're
Yeah.
very, very friendly to them. Very a business friendly state, as you know.
It, it's definitely a huge issue, and I think that can be related to this conversation in general. It's that bloat that is constantly an issue with like where money goes in a sector, or like even we can relate this to public education. Most of that money goes to the administrators, right? It
Right.
doesn't go to teachers, and so they're having issues finding teachers because, well,
It should go to teachers. We should support our teachers. Those schools don't happen without them.
and again, as far as like deregulating something, that's the first and foremost. The first problem that you see is like a bloated, a concentrated amount of money that goes to one thing and one thing only.
Right. I was just gonna say though, just real quick, Toggy, you can be part of the podcast if you want. What I should really just introduce you. This is Toggy. He, I think, didn't he used to work in like IT or something?
Yeah,
Toggy.
yeah. I'm a computer guy, laptop class.
And you know a fair amount about politics from what I've heard you talk. You actually
I
know
have
a lot.
I have a lot of fat opinions.
Right. But nevertheless, they're very thorough and well thought out opinions.
Some would say.
So what would you say?
I think Toby's one of the better people on Skype.
Right. When he first met you, Toggy, he thought that maybe you were an enlightened centrist, but he's got to know you a little bit better. He doesn't think that now.
Well, I think I'm the enlightened centrist in today's episode.
Oh.
I think I just supported the U.S. military accidentally. But anyway,
it's just, I think that's just how things are. With the currency and our position in the world, it's largely, or at least a good chunk of it's because of our military might, as you would say.
Right.
Well, they support the people. They're our people,
Yeah.
Like,
but the way
I don't support any of the behavior that we're using them for.
I mean, the way that they treat the soldiers and veterans too, after they use them for all these different wars and shit, it's astonishingly awful.
I'm also just seeing the outcomes of what we're getting for it.
Right.
We're just destabilizing the world and creating enemies, and we're spending a lot of money doing it. A lot of money doing it.
I bet you the CIA leaders in the CIA are happy about it though. In the private contract.
I mean, there's some agenda that's pleased by all of it, like at any point or another. But like, I don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
Got no idea, man.
Well, I just want to justify my so-called support for the military real fast, because
your hypothetical support if you were a centrist.
My problem with a lot of leftists, yes, I'm definitely to the left, but I have a hard time with how a lot of these people talk because they're just not in the real world. And we need to be in order to change things. And there's always like a lack of understanding, like as far as, and don't take me for an expert in this, I'm not, but like how like simple business, like all of that stuff works, and or why, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's just, we need to know the enemy. Let's just put it that way. And when we do, we understand it, then we can talk about policies or agendas to change it. But a lot of people just want to go, quick to revolution with no real basis.
And really, when you accomplish a revolution, chances are what you end up with is worse than where you started. It's kind of a miracle if you end up with anything functional.
Right. Yeah, I'm really for just kind of changing things for how things are now, because no one is going to get off their ass and start a revolution right now, because we have PlayStation 5, and like for the time being, let's just try to do this one thing and one thing only, and we can't even fucking do that, which is like vote. Let's see what happens there first, and then we can go from there.
We can't even hold to 1-year plans. How do we make 5-year plans?
Exactly. No luck in getting Rat on here though, right?
That's a Dylan question.
Yeah, Dylan, are you still there?
Seems he stepped out.
Oh, I was on mute. My bad. No, I was just gonna say, yeah, he usually doesn't come on here, Rad. Like I'm lucky to get him to answer on Snapchat sometimes. So, no, I was just gonna say that I was talking to Toggy the other day about what any kind of revolution, whatever side you're on, would require in the United States, and I was telling them that it would have to involve people planted across various different parts of government, and including people who have control over the tanks and the weapons and shit in the military. I just don't think it can happen without certain people. Like civilians alone, it's not, the revolution just isn't going to happen.
Well, Trump.
I mean, eventually, you are going to need the people with the larger weapons. Like, if you actually expect to win, win a revolution, anyways,
you cannot
you can fight your way out of a country's control just with bricks. Like, honestly, you really can. Like, eventually, they get tired of policing the problem. But if you want to actually take over the country, like, that's going to require some heavier shit.
To actually take over the country, even the most powerful assault rifles or weapons that civilians can get their hands on is no match for what the government can throw upon you in their wrath. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Unless your goal is to be left alone. They actually do have a pain point that's lower, generally speaking.
Like if government officials come out to like some ranch in the middle of nowhere and there's like a whole bunch of people with guns, they'll just leave probably.
I mean, it depends on the size, and it depends on what their intent is.
Well, that actually happened once, like I think like 2009 or something. There was like some kind of standoff.
Waco.
Yeah, that happened at Waco. They just burned them.
Yeah, that was Waco. No, I was talking about where there wasn't any shots fired.
The Bundys, I think you're talking about in Oregon.
I think
at a certain point, though, you don't even need bricks. Like, you just need to get things to a point where the military has to shoot its own people, and they didn't sign up to do that, by and large. So that's how you turn things over. Like, you make people unwilling to carry out the orders.
I don't know. I think you're always going to find those people, but
there's always going to be people that will do it regardless. But like, most people did not enlist to go like to their own home and like fuck it up.
Nope.
I want to expand on that. I largely think it just comes down to like money. You just have to last for as long as they're willing to spend the money on the pursuit. We see this with the Middle East constantly, don't we?
Oh yeah.
And
Saudi Arabia.
well, I mean, just recently, Afghanistan, right? I don't. We were talking about this with Boutros the other day about Trump gets arrested. There's going to be like these Meal Team 6 types of people who are going to riot. Well, he got arrested today, and it didn't really happen. I don't think it's going to. I just don't. I think a lot of people, especially those types, January 6th is probably the worst that we saw, and that was largely capped on. Probably not capped the way that most of us would have liked, but there were definitely consequences, and they have better things to do, like go, golfing, because that's literally what those people are. They're fucking like middle management types, with reverse mortgages or what the fuck. I don't know.
They're middle class armchair people with like delusions of revolution.
Yeah, exactly.
That wouldn't be able to live for like a week without electricity, and it wouldn't take very much for the government to stop their entire rebellion.
Yeah, and that large like far right nut job case thing it still exists, but as far as like the Trump train, that's dwindling. It's not as strong as it was in 2016 or even
Right.
20.
It's fading away. The
Yeah.
support is
That
going.
that's
It's not going up. I know that.
well,
Nah,
I was
man, it's huge. It's huge.
that 538. I'm not like a huge fan of 538, but I do think they do their best and what they think is their best, and I'm not one to comment on that. But that poll that I showed, the other nut job, Javier, right? That was significant because what we were seeing is an increase in his disapproval rating by the time that indictment came out. And that's the general population. That's not just Democrats or just Republicans. That's the population.
And he just got indicted again.
Well, I mean, he got
Classified
arrested
documents.
for that indictment.
Yeah.
But significant is it's the federal level now, and so he'll bail himself out. But at the same time, he'll be back, man. He is fucked.
Dude, even if he goes to prison, like I think Togby's right about what he said, where he'll basically just have it all in there.
There's no way he's getting treated badly.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I have a theory that I don't know. I'll just say this because it'll be interesting if this is going to be the case. I kind of think he'll move to Russia. I have this feeling, and I think that is going to cause a shitstorm because of being a former president and being the stuff he knows.
He can actually campaign and peddle propaganda from Russia.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I think maybe like 40%. I'm right about that. I'm not going to hold that more than just a theory or a thought that I have. But I thought about this while I was watching the indictment on YouTube and just thinking, yeah, that is a possibility.
My thoughts about it is that I don't know, like I think it's 50-50 on him going to prison, or actually really 60-40. I think he's a little bit less likely.
I think it's more. I think he is, like there's another one coming. There's another indictment coming, meddling with the election. That's also
right. But I see them
that's been like waiting,
Yeah, I see them litigating it out, and then like by the time that let's say they sentence him to prison, I think he'll be dead by then. I think they're going to litigate this out as long as they can.
Maybe I'll give you that because it is a process, but still, like there is just no way he gets out of this shit. And again, I was one who said I don't think he's going to prison. Now I think he's going to prison.
I think
with the Secret Service and everything.
I don't even know how that shit works. I don't know. I guess if he like legit gets convicted, his presidential privileges goes out the window. I would imagine.
There's no provision for which that they go away. So like I guess he's getting like guards in prison with him.
Maybe it's beyond my understanding.
You're gonna have to build a special presidential prison.
Theoretically, you could be president while in prison. Like seriously.
Technically, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, that's a hard one. Like there was one. I think it was either a congressperson or a state representative. I want to say it was a congressperson who actually served jail time while he was a congressperson. And this like getting indicted and even getting convicted for like state level crimes, like it's been all through history. I mean, what's his name? Tom DeLay from Texas. He was convicted, and he still his time as a congressperson. But I don't think that they like went to jail. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, typically though, usually people who are in government and then they get like charged with a crime, they go to prison. Usually, at some point during all of that, they just resign. Like that's usually what they do. But some people don't budge. Some people are like, nah, fuck it. I'm gonna serve in Congress or whatever while I'm behind bars.
Yeah, I mean, run.
Huh?
He could technically run.
Yeah.
And theoretically actually pardon himself.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but I don't think we have to really worry based on that disapproval rating. I like remember when I said this is why I think other people are running now. I think that's why they're running now.
I don't like how the DNC is just closing off debates altogether, though. I think that
I
Yeah.
think
there
it's
are
just
better
a
choices
strategy.
than Biden. Huh?
They don't want to take the chances. That I mean, look,
Well, I understand that, and I think that's
They're,
a cop
they're
out.
taking a big chance doing that. We're
Yeah,
pissing
they
off a
are.
lot of people.
yeah, I mean, they pissed off a lot of people in 2016. You know, like they all. I think, and you can agree, disagree what they're doing, but I think they've already kind of like seen the and seen like the possible like clout damage that will cause that it would cause if they close down, and they just assumed it's okay still.
But they're supposed to all be all about democracy, though.
Yeah, but they're also
Democrats.
a business, right? They're also
The DNC, yeah. I guess that they could hold debates on another format, channel or whatever. They could find another place to do it.
Yeah.
Now, will it have as much publicity? I don't know. Just depends on what they're able to organize. But it is possible they may not even have those debates.
honestly at this point there's not even really a strong candidate that's convincing even me that it's even worth it. I mean,
The guy who's getting the highest approval rating is that John F. Kennedy's nephew, which is kind of, he's not
He's a-
even really,
yeah, he's a joke.
he's like a Republican basically run as a Democrat.
Yeah, I mean the only one that I like agree with as far as what she's saying is Marianne Williamson, bless her heart, but she's not going to go.
Right. Ah, God. I really wish a progressive candidate could win, but a lot of time when they run progressive candidates, it's people that just aren't that like strong. If
Well,
I'm being blunt,
so
like,
you
huh?
got to put yourself in DNC shoes now. In their eyes, and they're kind of right about this in terms of like historical elements. Biden is that progressive candidate.
He's not. He's
Well,
not a
I'm trying to
progressive.
say like what he has done so far. We have to look as for we have to
Even what he's done is not progressive.
right. Look, I get it. I get it. Trust me, I do. But in terms of United States level, it is progressive. It is he arguably
I don't know about that.
president.
Like maybe a little bit, but for the most part, no. Like, and throughout his career, he's shown that he is really practically a conservative on economic issues. I do agree with Shank Uger on that. He kind of is. I mean, Toggy agrees too.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
I
he's a freaking Republican.
And I love how like people on the right, like a lot of them, they're like, "Oh my God, he's a fucking like radical leftist." It's like, no, he isn't. Not even close.
But that's significant, though. That's what I'm trying to say. Like largely, by and large, the country itself, the policies we have, how we run the government, is right wing. Compared to the world in terms of like industrialized countries, right?
Oh yeah, on the political axis on the world, like Bernie Sanders isn't even that far to the left.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like in terms of historical elements of the United States, yeah, Biden's presidency is more.
Was all of the Democrats campaigning to appeal to right wingers even worth it? Like the Lincoln Project and all of that shit. Like, did that actually even like get anybody? Like,
well, no and yes. There was Biden types, right? Like, but there were all other candidates who shifted their positions as well. Like, you had the Pixar cartoon guy, the gay dude. I'm sorry to bring up his like sexuality, but that's the only way we're gonna know who I'm talking about
the
here.
Disney faggot. Go on.
Pete Buttigieg, that's he came out as this like lefty a little bit at least, and then he just switched to Biden-esque stuff. And same with Kamala Harris. She did the same type of stuff. I mean, fucking Elizabeth Warren did the same type of stuff. Not as severe as them, but they shifted to the center, to try to get more.
Well, you know, when I was like years ago, when I was a Trump supporter on the right, I actually thought Pete Buttigieg sounded kind of good when he was running. Back
Yeah,
then.
I like Pete for the most part. I think that he doesn't know what he's talking about with guns. Unfortunately, most of the progressives don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. There are several things about gun policy that I think that a lot of more leftist Democrats just don't understand, and like they need to understand what they're regulating.
It's a very complex issue.
I'll listen to any proposal, but
I
like
will
not
too.
not from people that don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I largely agree with that. I think most of the people who are talking about it are like, yeah,
Honestly, I'm open to hearing any gun policy that isn't like, you know, inspired by NRA propaganda.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, like I'm
Seriously.
even willing to I'm even willing to listen to people that believe that they should just be banned. You know, just be honest.
Sure.
You know.
yeah, yeah. It's always going to be a wish-washy thing with that, especially with your
Yeah.
Democrat. Rob.
Well, they spin this narrative though that whenever they do these assault rifle bans, they act like the government's just coming to people's houses and just confiscating the weapons. But really, at least the ones that have happened in the United States, they've all basically been just banning the new sale, distribution, manufacturing of them. It doesn't actually ban you from having it if you already have it.
Yeah, this is
You
where
know?
The
And you,
ATF can and does wreck people's ship, like, and they're completely arbitrary about how they do it. I don't know. They kind of make up their own law.
I was going to say.
They decide something can be sold for like 5 years, and then they're like, "Oh, just kidding! No, all these things are felonies now."
you can also
Those are the
buyback programs
those people
too.
who are going to call these Democrats who they're going to call them anyway. That's why I agree with Togi. Just say you want to ban guns. Just say it.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
that's a more honest discussion.
Definitely. I know.
I don't want any pretend pro gun people. Like that's just annoying and insulting. You know.
But like you got to phrase it and present it as something where if you ban it, it's for the
I mean,
new
yeah,
sale.
you have to sell me on the idea, but you know, like at least be honest.
Right.
You know, like
Right, and I just the best way to do it is you ban it, and once it's banned, you also don't like make people think like they're gonna come to your houses and take the ones you already have. Just ban the new ones. That's how they've always done it.
I don't know.
Have a buyback program. Shit.
How are you gonna solve like the sheer number of how many that there are in this country? Because like that to me
that's
is
tough.
almost that to me is almost impossible to unravel. Because like there's more of them than there are people, and I know that gun nuts say this, but like it's actually legitimate. Like there are more guns than people inside the borders of this nation.
Yeah, it's insane.
So like how do you even begin to like
Well, a start would be making it to where it isn't like so easy for like some random 18-year-old like in Texas to just go and buy it on his birthday and be like, oh, you know.
so you
shoot
just
all these people.
you just slow the velocity of at least legal sales, and then
Yeah, you could do that,
Yeah.
and you could also not like you also have even just waiting periods and better background checks.
Well, I think the
Like-
biggest one, at least for like Texas, is having a handle on these gun shows, because that's where they're getting them.
Oh, that's the gun show loophole. Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, there really is not a gun show loophole, like except in Vegas. Vegas is the one place where things are weird because in Vegas, like
I don't know. Florida's got them too.
Florida can also be weird. So Florida's got a lot of these pawn shop like auctions and estate sales because like you got all these old people that just keel over and die, and everybody's got like a gun on like a folding table, and like you can easily just source a gun that way.
Yeah.
And Vegas kind of has a similar thing going on in that regard.
More thing though too, because the last two shootings they got them at gun shows.
So did they buy from an FFL or did they buy from a private seller?
I think it was a private seller.
Okay, so like they bought like from someone in the parking lot, basically. Because
Something
like
that.
usually
Yeah,
if you go into the show, most shows, you can't sell anything privately except, just outside. But
Yeah,
like as long as you allow private sales,